What if I told you the most powerful technology on Earth isn't silicon or satellites? It's the two words you say every day. I am. Not a description. Not a story. A command. If you stay with me for the next 25 minutes, I'll show you 3 things. Why I am is the single most creative force you carry. How most of us are inadvertently using it to reproduce stress, sickness, poverty, and relationship pain, and how to turn it the other way. Deliberately, intelligently, and practically, so your words become the tools that build your life, not the chains that repeat your past. Here's the roadmap. First, we'll unpack what I am really means and how it functions as creative law. Then we'll look closely at how that plays out in 4 major everyday arenas: health, stress, money, relationships, with concrete modern examples. Finally, I'll give you 2 small, high-leverage habits you can integrate today that begin to rewrite your baseline identity. No meditation required. This is teaching. This is transformation applied. What I am is the name of creative action. Across spiritual traditions, people have known that language does work. In Genesis, the world is formed by speaking. In Eastern tradition, sound is the seed of creation. And in the I am teachings, we meet a simple, lethal idea. The 2 words I am name the active presence of life within you. When you say them, something answers. Not metaphorically, mechanically. When I say I am, the universe turns its attention to what follows. This is not mystical flattery. It's an operating dynamic. Think of I am as the ignition switch. Whatever follows is the engine you start. Spoken with care, it becomes a vehicle for truth. Spoken out of habit or contraction, it becomes a script you then live. Now, to make this practical, I want you to notice the difference between 2 sentences. I am tired. I am restoring my energy. Both acknowledge fatigue. One binds it as identity. The other locates it as a temporary condition with direction. The first is a decree toward continued depletion. The second is a corrective instruction to the organism. There are 3 elements at work every time you speak I am. The word, which calls. The feeling behind it, which charges. And the attention you hold afterward, which sustains. Remove or weaken any of these and the decree loses force. Align them, and the statement becomes an engine. This is why spirituality that is only ideas rarely changes lives. You can read thousands of pages of spiritual theory and remain functionally unchanged if your daily language continues to create the old pattern. The work is linguistic and somatic, not merely intellectual. By the way, if you've ever wondered why some affirmations feel empty and others feel real, this answer will surprise you. Stay with me. We'll dismantle the common mistakes and show you exactly how to make an affirmation land so it actually changes your behavior, your nervous system, and your world. How I am works mechanically. Words, story, and physiology. Let's get clearer about mechanism. How do words change a body, a bank account, or a relationship? The answer lies in 3 connected circuits. Identity programming. When you continually label yourself, I am tired, I am broke, I am alone, you give your nervous system a template to look for. Your perception filters for evidence. Opportunities get ignored because your internal software isn't expecting them. Your body conserves energy because tired is now the operating system. It's identity-driven filtering. Emotional charge. Words alone are light. Feeling is the transformer. When you say, I am courageous, but your body is contracting in fear, your nervous system treats the words as noise. Conversely, if you allow even a small spark of the feeling behind the statement, a breath of courage, the memory of a time you acted boldly, the body aligns itself, releases hormones that support action and primes behavior. As I said earlier, words are the blueprint, feeling is the electricity. Sustained attention. The 3rd circuit is time, the residency you give to a thought. One spoken sentence is a spark, repetition in daily life. Integrated attention and action. These are the coals that keep the fire. If you say, I am expansive once and then default to scarcity in every decision, nothing changes. The decree requires what we might call ritual of attention. Small choices that consistently reflect the new identity. Here's a modern example. Imagine a salesperson who's always told themselves, I'm just not a good closer. That verbal pattern trains their attention to notice failed calls, awkward silences, and rejections. The feeling associated with that identity is anxiety, which tightens their voice and posture. The combination, identity, charge, and attention, produces behavior that confirms the belief. Change the language to, I am competent at building trust. Practice the feeling of curious empathy in 3 calls a day, and notice you start to behave differently. You ask different questions, you listen more than you defend, and your metrics shift. This is the functional anatomy of how I am creates. A final point, the creative law does not care about your intention to be humble or realistic. It obeys the structure you give it. So using I am without deliberation is like clicking submit on a command without reading the code. In a few minutes, I'll show you exactly how this plays out in your body, why a single sentence can change your immune response, your sleep, and your appetites. That alone will change how you ever again speak about health. Health, language, the body, and the limits of should. Let's begin with perhaps the most intimate arena, the body. We live inside a biological organism that receives instruction through the nervous system. Words that identify the self become biochemical signals. Emotions map onto hormones. Attention rewires circuits. Put together, the language you habitually use about your body literally shapes its functioning. Now, this does not mean words replace doctors. Never. But it does mean the mental, verbal, and emotional climate you maintain will strongly influence outcomes. The placebo effect, for instance, is an example. Meaning, expectation, and trust account for measurable changes in physiology. If the body expects healing, it engages resources differently. Where people miss the point is in conflating honesty with identity. Saying, I am tired at 3 p.m. because you need a break is honest. Declaring, I am tired as a constant identity, that's who I am, programs the system for chronic depletion. Many chronic conditions are not created by words alone. They arise from complex histories, genetics, environment, and trauma. But words are an ongoing input. They either feed the cycle or support repair. So how do we apply this in a practical, high-integrity way? 2 principles. Acknowledge, don't bind. If you feel ill, acknowledge without transferring identity. I am experiencing fatigue right now, versus I am a tired person. The first clause names a state. The second locks identity. Instruct the organism toward repair. Use language that implies action and restoration. Try phrases like, my body is returning to harmony, or my cells are supported and renewing. Back these statements with practical action. Rest, hydration, appropriate medical care, and small habits that tell your body you mean it. A client of mine who'd been told repeatedly that her condition would be lifelong changed her internal language and her daily micro-habits. Small mobility routines, consistent sleep windows, and a daily phrase spoken with feeling. My body is cooperating with healing. Within months, she reported less pain, more mobility, and a renewed sense of agency. Again, this is not a cure-all. It is a different set of instructions that mobilizes resources. So speak to your body as you would to a garden. If you plant seeds and then say they'll never grow every day, you'll see what happens. If you water, tend, and say these seeds will grow, your actions follow, and growth is more likely. Up next, we'll look at stress, the silent architect that translates words into life patterns, and I'll show a simple linguistic swap that calms the nervous system in moments. Don't click away. This stress, language that keeps the nervous system locked. Stress is the common currency of modern life. We praise being busy, we measure worth by the speed of our calendars, and language quietens into shorthand. I'm always stressed. I can't. Those 2-word identities are nervous system contracts. They keep the fight-flight rhythm engaged and reduce bandwidth for creativity, calm, and repair. Here is a practical and immediate application. When you notice tension arising, instead of saying, I'm stressed, use an instruction that reorients the system. For example, I'm able to be composed right now. Or, more physiologically anchored, my breath is returning me to calm. The difference is subtle but profound. The first statement claims identity. The second is an action orientation that engages regulatory physiology. Why does it work? The autonomic nervous system responds to cues that imply safety or threat. Language that implies competence, agency, and repair sends safety cues. Language that implies collapse reinforces threat cues. You can do one micro habit. When you feel the first spike of stress, pause, plant your feet, exhale slowly, and say, out loud or in your mind, I am present. Then take 2 steady breaths. That small pause interrupts the feedback loop, and the declaration begins to reprogram the next behavior you choose. Over weeks, this compounds. The nervous system learns a new language of calm. Your attention changes. You respond differently to emails, to kids, to traffic. The declaration is not a magical incantation. It's a linguistic lever that shifts physiology and primes more skillful behavior. In a moment, I'll show you how the same principle applies to money, and why your bank balance is as much a story as it is a ledger. The words you use about scarcity or supply matter more than the spreadsheet. Money. Scarcity language, abundance identity. Money shows us how language, emotion, and action meet in the world. Scarcity is primarily an interior posture. If you say, I am broke, every decision you make will tend toward contraction. You'll avoid risk, neglect opportunity, and collude with the very story you claim. Money is not purely metaphysical. It is also a behavioral output of choices influenced by perception. But here's the useful pivot. Abundance language shifts your field and primes different behavior. Statements like, I am open to new supply, or I am resourceful, do not promise dollars from thin air. They change how you look at offers, how you follow up, how you bring initiative and creativity into work. The energy changes, and your behavior follows. There's also a social element. Money moves through relationships and networks. When you carry a scarcity identity, you unconsciously communicate fear in negotiations and collaborations. When you carry a steady abundance identity, you attract different kinds of conversations and opportunities. Pair language with action. Choose a phrase that points you toward practicality. For instance, I am building pathways to income. Then add structured acts. Send 3 outreach emails this week. Refine a pitch. Make 1 call you've been avoiding. Language without action is aspiration. Action without aligned language is friction. Together, they create a field in which opportunities are more likely to be seen and seized. And finally, be precise. I am abundant is a good field statement. But specifying a pathway, I am opening to a new client this month, marries the creative statement to a measurable behavior, which short-circuits doubt and creates momentum. One more area, relationships, and then a short, powerful set of daily practices to pull everything together. If you care about love, listen closely to this next shift. Relationships, mirrors, projections, and the language of belonging. Relationships are maybe the clearest mirror for what we speak into being. The phrases you use about yourself are the lens through which others mirror you. If you go into conversation saying, I am unlovable, you unconsciously select partners and small behaviors that confirm that narrative. If you go into conversation saying, I am deserving of respect, your behavior, tone, boundary, choice will reflect and elicit different responses. 2 important clarifications. First, this is not victim blaming. If you grew up in an environment that teaches you scarcity, shame, or fear, those patterns are inherited and resilient. The point is not to blame you for them, but to give you a lever to begin changing the narrative. Second, language isn't manipulation. Saying, I am loved to try and trick someone into feeling better isn't the practice. The practice is remembering and aligning your nervous system to a deeper truth that then allows you to behave from a place of worth, which is far healthier for relationships. A practical shift here is to change your internal default script before you enter difficult conversations. Rather than the fearful preface, I'm afraid they won't listen, try, I am clear and I speak with integrity. That changes tone, posture, and the words you choose. It reduces defensiveness and invites reciprocity. Finally, relationships require action. Language shapes the inner climate. Behavior writes the outer covenant. Use I am statements to orient yourself toward the person you want to be in relationship, not to control the other, but to show up differently so the relationship can evolve into its next phase. 2 simple habits. We're not doing a guided meditation here. I promised you teaching and usable habits. Here are 2 minimal but high-leverage practices you can use immediately. Each takes no more than 3 to 5 minutes a day, and together they rewire how I am functions in your life. Habit 1, the morning declaration, 3 minutes. When you get up, stand, place a hand on your heart, and say 3 sentences out loud. 1 for health, 1 for work, money, 1 for relationship. Use present action-oriented phrasing. For example, I am energizing my body today. I am open to new supply and take action. I am clear and compassionate in my relationships. Speak them slowly, feel them for a breath or 2, then go about your morning. It's short, but it sets a linguistic field for your day. Habit 2, the micro-pause. 1 minute, used across the day. Whenever you feel contraction, a tight chest, rapid breath, or a moment of snap judgment, pause for 1 breath, plant your feet, and say 1 corrective sentence. I am present, or I am choosing differently now. Follow it with 1 small action. A calm breath, a different response, a task completed. This interrupts the automatic loop and begins to create new neural pathways. Those are not spiritual gimmicks. They are consistent inputs of new language, charged by feeling and followed by action. Over time, they change how the nervous system interprets experience, which changes behavior, which changes outcomes. So here's the essential truth I want you to leave with. Language is not neutral. Your habitual I am becomes the gravitational center of your life. Use it by default and it repeats the old story. Use it deliberately and you become the author. You have an ignition switch in 2 words. Choose them with care. Choose them with feeling. And choose them long enough that the world begins to rearrange. You can do quietly each morning. You can find more at our resource page in the description below. If this teaching landed for you, subscribe to your inner shift. Share the video with 1 person who needs a new linguistic lever in their life. And tomorrow morning, stand, put your hand over your heart, and say your 3 sentences out loud.